Welcome back to Time Tested Mastery Life Lesson Cell. I'm Mark Dolan. Recently, I had 3 different conversations with 3 very different men: Alan Langer, Neil Rogers, Tom Holland. Different backgrounds, different industries, different personalities. But I kept hearing the same lesson. Not once, not twice, over and over again. And the lesson was this: better sales results do not start with more pressure. They do not start with more clever lines. They do not start with more information dumped on people. They start with our own better behavior. That's where I want to spend our time today. Because if you are in real estate, sales, leadership, or business, this matters. A lot of people are still looking for the edge in the wrong place. They think the edge is more scripts, more automation, more tools, more fast answers, more persuasive language, and more polish. But these 3 conversations all pointed somewhere else. The real edge is in how you show up with people, how you greet them, how you listen, how you ask questions, how you slow down, how you make them feel, how you correct your own habits. Alan Langer put it this way. He said the problem with a lot of salespeople is that they lead with what he called commission breath. And I've heard that a lot. That hit me. Because people can feel that. They may not say it out loud, but they can feel when the person in front of them is trying to make a sale instead of trying to help. And Alan's whole idea was this: sell more by selling less. In plain English, stop leading with your own need, start leading with service. That lines up exactly with what I teach. If your only object is to make the sale, you are going to come across tense, rushed, needy, and self-focused. But when your objective is to understand the person and help them, your tone changes. Your pacing changes. Your questions change. Your whole posture changes. And Alan made another strong point. Most salespeople do not ask enough open-ended questions. They hear one surface problem and they dive straight into the pitch. That is a mistake. He gave the example of somebody saying the roof is leaking. A weak salesperson hears that and starts talking about shingles, underlayment, awards, colors, and features. A stronger salesperson says, "Tell me more about it." And maybe, "How has that affected you?" Now you are getting somewhere. Now you are finding the real problem. That is true in real estate too. The first thing a buyer says is not always the real issue. The first thing a seller says is not always the real fear. The first statement is often just the doorway. Your job is not to pounce on it. Your job is to stay with it long enough to understand what is underneath it. And that takes patience. It takes discipline. It takes your own emotional commitment. Then I talked with Neil Rogers. Neil came in through the hospitality industry, and I love that. He said, do not underestimate the power of the first greeting. He is right. A lot of people in business are far too casual about first impressions. They are distracted, rushed, mentally somewhere else, answering the phone half present, walking into an appointment without intention, starting an open house like it is simply routine. But the first greeting sets the tone. Neil said, make it authentic, make it sincere, make it special, not overdone, just real. That matters because people are deciding very quickly whether they feel comfortable with you. Not just whether you are competent, whether you are safe enough to trust. Then Neil said something else that is worth remembering. Active listening is not waiting to give your expertise. That's so strong. A lot of people are not listening, they are reloading. They're waiting for the opening where they can jump back in and prove everything they know. And in doing that, they miss the person. Neil also said, never pass up an opportunity to keep your mouth shut. That is a great line, and it is so needed because many salespeople overtalk. They interrupt, they one-better the client, they drag in jargon, they talk industry language the public doesn't even care about, and they don't even understand it. That does not build trust. Clarity builds trust. Your presence builds trust. And restraint builds trust. Neil's whole theme was hospitality as a business advantage. And that's a powerful idea. Not weakness, not being a pushover, not becoming a doormat, but genuine hospitality. Professional kindness, professional calm, professional attentiveness. That still wins. Then came Tom Holland with his gruff voice. Tom came at this through behavior and habit, and he said it about as plainly as anybody can say it. Information doesn't change people, behavior does. That is not just true in sales, that is true in life. A lot of people know what to do. They know they should prospect. They know they should follow up. They know they should listen better. They know they should ask stronger questions. They know they should stop doing the things that irritate clients. The problem is not the knowledge. The problem is in their behavior. Tom said habits train us. That is the issue. You repeat something long enough and it starts owning you. He said it this way: if you do not master your habits will master you. That applies to addiction, that applies to sales, that applies to leadership, that applies to that applies to attitude, that applies to how you walk into every single appointment. Tom also talked about what he called an acquired defense protocol. In simple terms, both sides come into a sales conversation guarded. The client has a defense pattern, and the salesperson has one too. And because of that, most salespeople start badly. Can I help you? No, I'm just looking. And now both people are stuck in a script, and they have both heard 1,000 times. Tom changed that by changing his opening. He asked for the person's name. He wrote it down. He made the interaction personal. Then he asked a better question, not what brought you in, instead, what attracted you? That is a stronger word, a warmer word, a more human word. And that is worth pausing to think about, because tiny changes in language can change the emotional feel of a conversation. And then Tom did one more thing that every single salesperson should steal. He used what he called an after-action report. After the interaction, he reviewed what happened, and he scored himself. He looked for one correction, one improvement, one better move for the next time. That is maturity. That is how mastery is built. Not by saying, I've been doing this for 20 years, leave me alone. Some people do not have 20 years of experience. What they have is 1 year repeated 20 times. Mastery requires review, correction, humility, and adjustment. So when I put these 3 interviews together, here is what I see. Alan says, slow down, ask better questions, and help before you sell. Neil says, greet people well, listen hard, and serve first. Tom says, fix your habits, improve your behavior, and review your performance honestly. That is not 3 messages. That is 1 message for salespeople. The human part still matters the most. In fact, I would go further. As tools get faster, the human part matters more. Anybody can gather information. Anybody can generate words. Anybody can sound polished for a few minutes. But not everyone can make another person feel understood. Not everybody can stay calm under pressure. Not everybody can listen without rushing. Not everyone can speak in a way that lowers defensiveness. Not everyone can review their own behavior honestly and improve. So that's where your edge is. Here's a practical takeaway. This week, do not try to fix everything. Pick one thing. Pick one part of your sales behavior and improve it. Maybe it's your first greeting. Maybe it is asking 3 better open-ended questions to probe deeper. Maybe it is talking 30% less. Maybe it is removing jargon from your pitch. Maybe it is getting on the phone instead of hiding behind texting people. Maybe it is doing a 2-minute after-action review after every single appointment or lead call. But pick one, because that is how real mastery is built. Not in one giant breakthrough, not in one inspired moment, not through hype, quietly, consistently, under pressure, one intentional correction at a time. That is the work. And the good news is this: almost anybody can do the work. You do not need to become somebody else. You do not need to turn into a salesman caricature. You do not need to be louder. You do not need to be pushier. You do not need more tricks. You just need stronger habits, better questions, a better greeting, a calmer presence, a more service-first mindset, and the humility to keep improving. That is time-tested mastery, and that still works. If this helped you today, share it with one agent, one salesperson, or one team leader who wants results without manipulation. And follow Time-Tested Mastery Life Lesson Sell. And if you want trust-based sales training, coaching, or a keynote for your team, go to timetestedmastery.com. I'm Mark Dolan. I'll see you next time.